tale of two Donald Trumps.
I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents. Something I know something about. We will not allow that to happen. It will not happen again.
It doesn't take much to know which Trump has won out during his second administration. And what we're seeing in just the past few days is a president who appears to feel unrestrained in moving forward with his retribution campaign. There was the indictment on Thursday of former FBI Director James Comey. There was the news on Friday of the firing of former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Maya Song, who, like her boss, Eric Siebert, did not believe there was a strong case against Comey or against New York Attorney General Letitia James. Also on Friday, the New York Times reported that the Justice Department had subpoenaed records from Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis, who you may remember previously charged Trump in an election interference case. The Times says it's unclear whether Willis is the target of the inquiry. That same day, Trump took to social media to call on Microsoft to fire executive Lisa Monaco, a private company, mind you, who previously served as President Biden's deputy attorney general and has been a regular target of Trump's rants. Trump also singled out Democratic donors, billionaire philanthropist George Soros and LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman for possible investigation in his so-called crackdown on political violence. And in an unhinged rant posted yesterday, Trump accused Christopher Wray, the former FBI director Trump had appointed to replace James Comey, of lying as well. Trump falsely claimed that the FBI actually had more than 250 plainclothes agents embedded in January 6 crowds, and that Wray had, quote, some explaining to do. And again, let me reiterate, this was all just in the last few days. Joining us now to talk all about this, former DHS Chief of Staff during Donald Trump's first administration, Miles Taylor, and Politico magazine senior writer and former prosecutor Ankush Khardori. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Miles, you have been the target of these, as we called, unhinged rants. I'm wondering if you can walk us through the anatomy of a Trump threat and what it looks like, what it has meant for you personally, and what you think it means for other people who are potentially on, whether it's Kash Patel's list of enemies, Trump's Truth Social, or Christopher Wray.
Well, look, I'll say that the consequences, they are very real. I mean, since getting added to the president's blacklist in April with this executive order, which was the first time in American history a president issued an EO directing a federal investigation into a named critic for First Amendment protected speech. Legal scholars tell me that had never happened in 249 years in American history until that moment. And now it's become a standard. Now the president of the United States, with a stroke of a pen, can do that. Some people might say, well, that's just a mean press release, right? How does that affect your life? It resulted in the business that I have blowing up. It resulted in financial turmoil for my family. My wife and I had to consider whether we needed to sell our house to be able to afford the legal cost. It has resulted in death threats against our family and family members. I mean, to come home to your house.
And you're not just on the list. You are currently under investigation.
That's correct.
For what?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
At the time, the Wall Street Journal said this was tainted from the start because it was a, quote, fishing expedition. And that's what we believe it still is. The administration is hunting for evidence to justify the crime the president said I was guilty of. So this is the justice process backwards. The president said I was guilty of treason against the United States, a crime punishable by death, and then directed his team, go find me the evidence. So as we understand it right now, they're digging through every file, email, and action from my time in government to find something, anything, that they can use to try to prosecute me. Even if they do nothing, even if it's just being on that blacklist, you come home to your house and find your wife crying on the couch, honey, what's wrong? Someone sending me messages saying they want to hold my shoulders and force me to look at you as you get shot in front of a firing squad. These are the types of things that start to happen. Even if Trump doesn't take the charge of treason seriously, his followers do. They want to make sure you know it. They hunt you, they stalk you, they dox you, they harass you, among many other things. So just getting called out by the president in that way for in an unconstitutional way is very, very difficult in your personal life and the people around you. But it's not just about me, because this is a much broader thing that affects the American people. If my constitutional rights are being violated for this, anyone's constitutional rights are at risk because of this.
And Ankush, it's not about the conviction, right? What Miles is describing is that at the end of the day, it is very possible, I think likely, that President Trump doesn't care if you get hauled in and convicted, that James Comey gets convicted of something. It is about the fear that is being instilled. It's about the chaos that it causes. It's about the wink and nod to the followers to go after the family members and the person themselves. And there's no reason to believe it's going to stop, right? We actually should believe that we're at the beginning of this, and that we live in a country where the President of the United States is going to use the full power and weight of the federal government to go against people he has perceived have wronged him over the last decade. And that is just a new reality. How are we supposed to... that is in direct conflict with us as a democracy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the reality is we all have to now accept is that Donald Trump fully controls his Justice Department. Attorney General Pam Bondi is directly responsive to Trump. Reportedly, she opposed the indictment of James Comey, but here we are, it happened anyway. And supposedly she opposed, and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche opposed the removal of the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. It happened anyway.
Yeah, let me read, on that note, New York Times reporting on Bondi and Blanche having initial reservations for Lindsay Halligan, who was Siebert's replacement. Ms. Bondi and Mr. Blanche had not been given much of a heads up or veto power over the pick. Both quietly questioned Halligan's credentials to run such an important U.S. Attorney's office, according to a person with knowledge of her thinking. They have subsequently offered their enthusiastic support for Ms. Halligan. So you start dragging your feet at the beginning, but then you capitulate, so it almost doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, and Trump has told us, he told us last Saturday in this social media post that he fired the U.S. attorneys because that person wouldn't charge Comey and Letitia James and Adam Schiff. He has these executive orders out on Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs, and he's got a long list of people that he wants to pursue. So that just is now baked in to the world that we live in. The question now is how effective will these various efforts be? And I think to your point, the indictment of Comey, I think is further evidence that it's more about the process than the end. Because I think every competent federal prosecutor, current or former, who has looked at that case has said it's a real dog. And I would be surprised. Anything's possible. We're at the start of the stage. I would be surprised if he's convicted.
Is that an indictment you would ever put your name on? No, absolutely. I'm not surprised that nobody else in the office, which I once worked in for about 6 months, would do it either. These people aren't stupid. They don't want to put their bar licenses on the line, their reputations on the line. And I think that they did the right thing, making Lindsay Halligan or allowing Lindsay Halligan to do it herself. Because if this prosecution blows up or ends without a conviction, which I think it will probably end without a conviction, they would want to blame some deep state prosecutor or whatever. So if I'm in that office and I'm those prosecutors, you do it. You do it, Lindsay Halligan. And if you want a second chair at the trial, go get Todd Blanche to help you out with it. And you guys do this and you own it entirely. Because the case against Comey, I'm kind of surprised it even got past the grand jury. But bear in mind, they rejected one count. And on the two of the three counts, the two that went through, it was only 14 of the 23 grand jurors. You need 12 to get an indictment. They're applying a probable cause standard. They're just asking whether you've established probable cause that the crime has been committed, not whether it's been done beyond reasonable doubt. And there's no defense in the grand jury, and they still can only get 14. So what happens when there's an actual trial and there has to be a unanimous verdict, 12 jurors, beyond a reasonable doubt on every single element, with an actual competent defense present? I think the odds that the government prevails here are low, but you wouldn't care about that if really what you're focused on is the process.
Right. Miles, do you agree with Ankush that the intimidation, that the chilling effect is the point here? And do you think that the president and his Justice Department are going to be successful in bringing indictments against other people, potentially including yourself?
I think it's the point for Trump. It may not be for his lieutenants and his followers, and that's going to be a problem for him as he starts to lose these cases. There's nothing Donald Trump hates more than looking like a loser, and he's going to face pressure as he loses these cases. But for now, I will tell you what the president cares about most. He wants a montage of mugshots of his adversaries. And I mean that literally. There's that montage of Trump in the center and all the people involved in January 6th and others who were charged after his presidency. He wants that recreated with the faces of his enemies. This is a singular focus for him on a daily basis, is how do I create that guess who board of different faces of my enemies? But mugshots are not people in prison, and he's led his followers to think he's going to put people in prison for this. And I want to point out a deep hypocrisy that I haven't heard anyone point out yet, which is they have alleged that James Comey leaked to the press about a sensitive FBI investigation, and then they charged him. Right now, the Trump Justice Department is leaking to the press about a sensitive FBI investigation, the investigation into James Comey. They are doing the thing that they are decrying with these charges. Now, they said Comey lied about it. But right now, Trump's DOJ is actively leaking about this investigation.
Tweeting
about it.
And things from other investigations.
Exactly. They're doing the thing that they're arguing against. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I do think what has happened here is an impeachable offense. In some ways, the overt criminality of what happened here with the Comey indictment is more significant than you saw than in Trump's two previous impeachments.
Ankush, you said, you know, as you just noted, you worked in this office. You were doing this job at some point. Our colleague Ken Delanian reported on Friday that nearly every person that he was speaking with within the Justice Department was scrambling and trying to get out, if that was possible. Yesterday, we had someone speculating and sort of float the idea that people who can't leave might not be able to do so for pension reasons or financial reasons and whatnot. What are you hearing from the people that you previously worked with? Does that resonate?
I mean, there is always this sort of low-level anxiety, I guess, in these offices, including EDVA, when you have something like this happening. And this happened during the first Trump administration too. Quite frankly, I was in the office.
Not to this extent.
Well, no, I was just going to say, when Trump was elected in 2016, I was in that office at the time.
Right.
And there was a lot of anxiety about.
Do we stay or do we go? Yeah.
Yes. And I think for the most part, people should stay. And because, you know, the Comey thing, what happens with the Comey thing, it's not going to fall on any of them, the line prosecutors there who are not touching it. Let them do whatever they're going to do. Let them flail and fail at that prosecution. But yeah, I mean, people have jobs and they have kids, and it's a bad job market, particularly in this area, since the Trump administration fired so many lawyers from across the administration.
But is that not tacitly signing off on what's happening?
No,
that's the concern.
I do not think. I can understand why people might think, oh, if you're in this office that is prosecuting James Comey, then aren't you signing on to? I think that's unfair to the people in that office. If you're not touching the case, you're not touching the case. And that office needs to exist and run with competent prosecutors in it. It's an important office.